everybody. Today, Honey is going to continue reading Wayside Book 2. Wayside School is Falling Down. Written by Louis Shager and illustrated by Tim Hodge. Chapter 6. Pigtails. Hi, Leslie, said Paul. Hi, Paul, said Leslie. They were friends now. Paul hadn't pulled either of her pigtails for a long time. Paul sat in the desk behind Leslie. Once, a long time ago, he had pulled Leslie's pigtails. It felt great. That is, Paul thought it felt great. Leslie didn't think it felt too good. But that was earlier in the year when Paul was younger and immature. Now he knew better. Still, her two long brown pigtails hung in front of his face. All day, every day, the bell rang for recess. Leslie, said Paul, can I talk to you to your second? Sure, Paul, said Leslie. They were alone in the room. All the other kids and rushed down the stairs. Mrs. Jules had to run to the teacher's lounge. I've been good, right? Asked Paul. I haven't pulled one of your pigtails in a long time. Have I? So what do you want? A medal? Asked Leslie. Paul chuckled. No, well, can I ask you something? Sure, said Leslie. Paul took a breath. May I pull just one of your pigtails? He said. Please? No, said Leslie. Please, Paul begged. I won't pull it too hard. No one will have to go. Please, please. I wouldn't ask if it wasn't important. Please. You're sick, exclaimed Leslie. Paul lowered his head. I'm sorry, he said. You're right. I don't know what came over me. I won't ask again. Good, said Leslie. She shook her head in disgust. Paul watched her pigtails waggle. Can I just touch one? He asked. I won't even pull it. I promise. No! What's wrong with just touching one? Paul asked. Yuck, you're gross, said Leslie as she turned and marched out of the room. As Paul watched her go, her pigtails seemed to wave goodbye to him. He slapped himself in the face with both hands. What's wrong with me? He wondered. He walked to the side of the room and leaned over to the counter. He stuck his head out the windows to get some fresh air. Down below, he could see the kids playing on the playground. They looked like tiny toys. Leslie stepped back into the classroom. I'm getting my hair trimmed tomorrow, she announced. If you want, I'll save pieces for you. It will just be split ends. Paul was so excited he forgot where he was. He quickly raised his head. It bashed against the window frame and he bounced forward and toppled out the window. Leslie stared in horror at the open window, then rushed toward it. She leaned over the counter and looked down. Help! Gasped Paul. There was one brick on the side of the building that stuck out a little further than the others. Paul desperately held on it with both hands. I'll go get Louis, said Leslie. He'll save you. No, don't go, cried Paul. I can't hold on. My fingers are slipping. Leslie reached down for him. Try to grab my hand, she said. Paul made a grab for it, but missed, and quickly clutched to the brick. I can't. Help, I'm scared. Just don't look down, said Leslie, if she tried to stay calm. She pulled her head back in through the window. What are you going? Cried Paul. Help! Don't leave me! Leslie looked around Mrs. Jules' room for a rope or an extension cord or something to get Paul to grab. But she couldn't find anything. She returned to the window, sighed, then leaned out backward. Her hands that tightly held the edge of the counter as she looked up at the sky. Grab my pigtails, she said, then winced. A big smile came across Paul's face. Really? He asked. Just do it, said Leslie. The pigtails hung about a foot above Paul's head. He let go of the brick with his right hand and grabbed her right pigtail. Ah! Leslie yelped. He grabbed her left pigtail with his left hand. Ah! She screamed. Okay, pull me in, said Paul. His legs dangled beneath them. Leslie's eyes watered in pain as she tried to step away from the window. I can't, she groaned. You're too heavy. Paul swung his legs up against the side of the building. Try now. Leslie groaned, then took a little step away from the window as Paul took a small step up the wall. They each other took another small step. At last, Paul managed to get one foot on the top of the brick that jutted out. Leslie pulled her head inside the window. As she took another step, Paul let go of one pigtail and grabbed the windowsill. Leslie took another step, pulling Paul the rest of the way through. They both collapsed on the floor, tired and sore. Ooh, my head hurts, said Leslie. Well, you saved my life, said Paul. Well, don't worry, someday I'll save yours. You don't have to, said Leslie. Just don't pull my pigtails anymore. I won't, said Paul. Suddenly he laughed. What's so funny? Asked Leslie. This time your pigtails pulled me. Chapter 7. Freedom. Myron crumbled a cracker on the windowsill next to his desk, then looked away. He knew Audley would come when nobody was looking. A little while later, a bird landed on the windowsill and ate the crumbs. Myron watched him out of the corner of his eye. He was a blackbird with a pink breast. Myron had named him Audley. Is that your dumb bird again? Asked Kathy. No, said Marion. Audley is not my bird. I don't own him. He doesn't live in a cage. Audley is free. You're a bird brain, said Kathy. Marion watched Audley fly away. It made him sad and glad at the same time. He wished he could fly away across the sky with Audley. Audley probably thinks I live in a cage, he realized. Whenever he sees me, I'm sitting in the same desk. He probably thinks this desk is my cage. So Myron got out of the chair and sat on the floor. Myron, what are you doing out of your seat? Asked Mrs. Jules. I want to sit on the floor, said Myron. Several kids laughed. Get back to your seat, ordered Mrs. Jules. Myron reluctantly returned to his desk. I do live in a cage, he thought. I'm not allowed out. I have to stay in my cage until the bell rings. Then I have to go down when it rings again. I have to go down the stairs. Then when it rings again, I have to go up the stairs. I'm never free. The bell rang. Myron went down the stairs. He was so crowded with kids rushing to recess that he couldn't stop if he wanted. It was as if someone had lifted his cage and was carrying him down the stairs. The bell rang again. Myron went up the stairs. At lunch, the bell rang again. Myron went down the stairs. After lunch, the bell rang again. Myron stood at the bottom of the staircase and looked up. No, he declared. I won't go. I have to be free. As all other kids rushed past him, he eased his way around the back of the stairs. As everybody else went up, Myron went down to the basement. He nervously walked to the old creaky staircase. He didn't know where he'd find or what would find him. He had heard that dead rats were living down there, or worse, maybe even Mrs. Gorf. Mrs. Gorf was the meanest teacher Myron had ever had. She used to be the teacher of the 30th story before Mrs. Jules took over. But nobody believed that Mrs. Gorf was really gone. Nobody said she was still lurking somewhere inside Mrs. Wayside School. He stepped off the last step at the very bottom of Wayside School. It was too dark to see. Somewhere he heard a drip that echoed all around the cold and damp room. With his arms outstretched, he stepped across the gritty floor. His hand struck against a large fat pipe above his head. The pipe felt like it was covered with 1,000 spider webs. Still, Marwan kept his finger on the pipe as he walked, so he couldn't get lost. As long as he stayed with the pipe, he knew he'd be able to find his way back to the stairs. Something crawled across his hand. He shook it off, then continued walking. He thought he heard footsteps behind him. He stopped walking. The sound of the footsteps continued for a second, then stopped. He started again, then stopped. The footsteps stopped a few seconds later. He wasn't alone. It was too dark for Marion to see who was following him, but he realized that meant that person couldn't see him either. Whoever was coming after him had to have been following along the pipe too. So Marwan left the safety of the pipe and headed blindly across the basement. The footsteps continued behind them. He stopped. The footsteps stopped too. He bent down and took off his right sneaker. He threw it toward the other side of the basement. He heard it hit the floor, then the footsteps started after it. Very quickly, he took off his other sneaker and threw it in the same direction. He never heard his shoe hit the ground. The footsteps started after him again. He started to run, but slipped on the socked feet on a spot of slime. His hands hit loud and hurt if he fell on the cold floor. The footsteps came hurriedly toward him. He held his breath and tried to be quiet as possible. A light turned on over his head. He screamed, "I believe this is yours," said a bald man. He was holding Marwan's left sneaker. Next to him were two men with black mustache. One of the men held a black attached case. Marwan shook his head. "It's not my shoe," he said. "I never saw it before." The bald man glanced at Marwan's shoeless feet. "What's your name?" said the man without attached case. "Marwan," said Marwan. He regretted it as soon as he had said it. He wished he had made up a fake name. The man opened the attached case and took out a notebook. "Marwan," he repeated, as she crumbled down the notebook. "You're supposed to be in Mrs. Joe's class, at the desk next to your window, in front of Shuri." "What are you doing out of your cage? I mean, sit," asked the other man with a mustache. "I just wanted to be free," chirped Myron. "Please don't hurt me. If you let me go back to Mrs. Joe's room, I'll never come down here again." "Well, do you think to be free or do you think to be safe?" asked the bald man. "Huh?" asked Myron. "You can't have it both ways," said the bald man. "Do you want to be safe?" asked one of the men with a mustache. "Do you want to sit in the same chair every day and go up down the stairs every time the bell rings?" "You'll have to go to school 5 days a week," said the other man with a mustache. "You'll have to go to bed at the same time every day. But first, you'll have to brush your teeth," said the other man with a mustache. And you won't be allowed to watch TV until you finish your homework," said the other man with a mustache. "You'll have to go inside when it rains," said the other man with a mustache. "But first you'll have to wipe your feet," said the other man with a mustache. "Or you can be free," said the bald man. The man took a pencil, a piece of paper out of his attached case. "So do you want to be safe or do you want to be free?" Myron looked at the three men. "I want to be free," he said bravely. The man with the attached case was something on the piece of paper and gave it to Myron. "Sign here." Myron couldn't read the piece of paper. It was written in some kind of foreign language. He signed his name. The man took the paper and pencil from Myron and put them back into the attached case. "Okay, you're free," he said. "Good luck, Myron," said the bald man. "Here, I think you'll need this." He gave Myron his left sneaker, then reached up and pulled the chain. The light turned off. Myron found himself alone in the darkness. He put on the shoe back on, then hopped across the basement floor. He had no idea how to get back. At last, his hand hit against the pipe, but he still didn't know which way to follow it, left or right. He didn't even know it was the respite. He turned it left and continued hopping, keeping his finger on the pipe. He was just ready to turn and try the other way, then he nearly fell over a bottom stair. He hopped to the stairs, then continued hopping all the way up to Mrs. Jules' room. He was tired, sore, and dirty. "You're late, Myron," said Mrs. Jules. "Go write your name under the word discipline. Then return to your seat for a arithmetic test." But Myron didn't feel like an arithmetic test then. He definitely didn't want to write his name on the board. So he sat on the floor. And there was nothing Mrs. Jules could do about it. He was free. After school, Mrs. Jules found Myron's other sneaker in the teacher's lounge in the refrigerator. Chapter 8. The Best Part. Todd brought a toy to school. It was a cute, adorable puppy dog. Everybody who saw it said, "Oh, oh," said Jenny. "He has such a sweet face." "Oh," said Stephen. "Look at her dirty eyes." "Oh," said Didi. "Isn't he the cutest puppy you've ever seen?" "Oh," said Calvin. "Isn't she adorable?" Joy sat on the desk behind Todd. "Big deal," she thought. "It's just a hunk of plastic that happens to look like a dog." But even though Joy didn't like Todd's toy, she decided to steal it. "Wait," said Todd. "Let me show you the best part." Before he could show them the best part, Mrs. Jules rang her cowbell. "Take your seats," she commanded. "The bell has rung." All the children returned to their desks. "Todd, go write your name on the blackboard." Todd was the only one who had been in his seat. Yet he was the only one who got in trouble. It was typical. Mrs. Jules had a system. The first time someone gets in trouble, he had to write his name on the blackboard under the word discipline. The second time he gets into trouble, he had to put a check next to his name. And if he got in trouble third time, he had to circle his name and go home early at 12 o'clock on the kindergarten bus. Todd went home on the kindergarten bus every day. Some of the other children thought he was lucky, but he wished just once he could make it to 12 o'clock without getting into trouble 3 times. He walked in front of the room and wrote his name on the blackboard under the word discipline. While Todd was at the board, Joy reached over his desk and into Todd's. He felt around for the toy, but as she tried to lift it out, he caught on something and dropped on the floor. Todd returned to his seat. "Todd, is your toy on the floor?" asked Mrs. Jules. "Hey, how did it get there?" asked Todd. "You know the rules, Todd," said Mrs. Jules. "Toys must be kept inside your desk, or else I'll take them. Now bring it here." Todd gave the toy to the Mrs. Jules. "Oh, how precious," cooed Mrs. Jules. "He's the most lovable puppy I've ever seen." She kissed Todd's plastic puppy on his plastic nose. "I guess I can let you off this time," she said, "but try to keep him on your desk." She kissed Todd's toy again, then handed it back to him. "You can erase your name from the board too." Todd could hardly believe it. For the first time he erased his name from the blackboard. As she had it home from the seat, Mrs. Jules said, "Here, take a Tootsie Roll Pop too, for the sweet puppy." Todd was amazed. So was Joy. Now, more than ever, he wanted that toy. Out at recess, everybody wanted to see Todd's toy. "It's magic," said Baby. "It kept you from getting into trouble." "No, Mrs. Jules is just a nice teacher," said Todd. "Here, let me show you the best part." He grabbed the hold of the dog's tail and turned it like a crank. Suddenly, the cute floppy ears stood straight up, the mouth opened wide, and the teeth grew into sharp fangs. "Wow," breathed Didi. Todd wasn't finished. He pulled the dog's nose and stretched out of his face. His cheeks became thin and bony. The eyes were no longer sweet, but green and frightening. "What a great toy," said Calvin. The cute little puppy had turned into a mean, hungry, man-eating wolf. "I still haven't shown you the best part," said Todd. But before he could show them the best part, the bell rang, and everybody ran up the stairs to class. "I've got to get the puppy dog," thought Joy as she stared at the back of Todd's neck. "Then I will never get in trouble again." She didn't know Toad's toy had changed into a man-eating wolf. Her lunchbox was on her lap. She quietly opened it out and took a carton of cranberry juice and a tiny straw. She sucked the straw into the carton and sucked up some juice into it. She waited for Mrs. Jules to turn around, then blew the juice out of the straw. It spattered against Todd's neck. He slapped the back of his neck with his hand. Joy left to herself. She sucked up more juice. She took careful aim and fired. Todd turned around, but Joy already had the straw out of her mouth and was looking down at her book. Todd rubbed his neck and faced front. Joy sucked up more juice and blew it into Todd's neck. "Hey!" he shouted, turning around. "Leave me alone, Todd. I'm trying to work," said Joy. "Todd, what's the matter with you?" said Mrs. Jules. "I tried to be nice, but you're just taking advantage. Now go to rhyme at the blackboard." Todd walked to the front of the room. What still through Mrs. Jules was the nicest teacher in the world. He looked up at the clock. It was almost 11. "I might just make it today," he thought. "I just will make it." He started to write his name when he heard a loud scream. He turned around and saw Joy jumping up and down and waving her hand in the air. His toy was biting her pinky, and she couldn't shake it off. "Help!" screamed Joy as she hopped around the room. "Todd, how do I get it off? Todd, please!" Todd smiled. "There," he said. "That's the best part."